It's that time of the week. Yes, this week's Cult Movie Show, your weekly look at cult movies. Please welcome your hosts, Warren and Velvet.
Yes, we are back. We were away for a few weeks, but we are back with the Cult Movie Show and Podcast 78 with myself, Warren, and of course, the amazing, the brilliant, the talented, the gorgeous Velvet. How are you today, Velvet?
I'm wide awake now. That scared the shit out of me the way you opened the show. No, excellent though. Yeah, really happy that we're doing this and we're here. And wow, it's December. Christmas is coming up next week over here in the United States. Also in Australia, I believe. We celebrate the same days,
all over the world, actually, Velvet. It's actually the same day.
No, but Canada celebrates on the 25th and the 26th.
That's right. But so do you.
Yeah.
But Christmas it's the same day in every country.
Every year?
It doesn't actually.
Every year?
It's not occasionally October the 32, the
23rd. It just depends on my mood, because sometimes it's a nightmare before Christmas, and then, you got Christmas in July, just depends on your mood. All joking aside, it is Christmas time sometime or other in December around the world.
Yes.
So I think we can agree. Okay.
Although the Dutch go very early, though. The Dutch actually start in early December. So.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, how interesting. Okay, so we can say it is the month of Christmas. Good to know.
It is the month of
Christmas. The month of
Christmas. So we shall say to all of our guests, whether you celebrate it or not, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And hope you're all enjoying what do they call it? The festive season. Yes.
So I am so hoping that we pull off a Christmas episode this year, because I listened to our previous two Christmas episodes and they were both fantastic and hilarious. And both of those episodes added Christmas movies to my yearly Christmas playlist, and Krampus, as well as A Christmas Horror Story, which is an amazing horror anthology that is Christmas themed. Watch that every year now. And of course, one of my new favorites, new for me, is Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Yes.
You can do the British tradition, actually, Velvet, and you could throw a James Bond film in there. Because it's tradition to have a James Bond film on Christmas Day.
I did not know that.
Yes, apparently, as I've been told by all my British friends, apparently it's tradition. Yes, they always play a Bond film on Christmas Day for some reason. So,
how fun!
Yeah.
Now they just got to fight over which one to choose. There's so many.
There's a few, 24 of them. Yes, there's a few. But yeah, look, hopefully if we do a show next week, hopefully we could actually make that the official Christmas show.
That would be great. I think we should definitely do that. And I think that's perfect, because even though it'll be after Christmas, that gives people a chance to still get caught up, because I hate how everything's all at once. It's like, we got to get everything done before Christmas. We got to do it on Christmas. Be nice to have a nice little Christmas movie podcast to look forward to after Christmas.
Yes. So I think we shall do that. Now,
awesome.
So apologies that we haven't been on for a couple of weeks. There's been some technical difficulties. There's been some illness. There's been, the fact that we actually have fucking lives, so we do apologize for that. But we are, of course, back this weekend. So I should, before we go anywhere, ask what I always asked at this time, Velvet. Have you seen any good films lately?
Oh my God, I have not. That's how fucking busy I've been. I usually go to the movies 2 to 3 times a week. I have not gone to the movies in over a month, and I am so upset, because I'm starting to realize, I'm like, oh no, I'm getting behind.
Right.
I'm missing all these movies. And I mean, I want to see the new Aquaman. I want to see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where there's this whole dimensional thing, and there's a bunch of different Spider-Mans. It's an animated cartoon. Have you heard about this one, Warren?
No.
Oh my God, I need to see. It's getting rave reviews. Without spoiling it too much, there's one character I cannot wait to see. It is a character that his name is Spider-Ham when he is Spider-Man. His name is Spider-Ham, like the pork, like the pig. Yeah. And when he's not in his hero costume, his name is Peter Porker. Long story short, is a humanoid talking pig that has Spider-Man powers, and I can't wait.
It is Spider Pig. Finally, from the Simpsons,
it is.
We have Spider Pig. Spider Pig does whatever a Spider Pig does.
So, I really can't wait to see this movie. But yeah, I can't wait to see the new Aquaman too. That's out now, I believe, and it just. This is one of those movies, without even seeing the movie, I have already decided that I love this movie because the visuals and the CGI in the trailer look so amazing. I'm like, you had me at Underwater World. You had me at giant sea turtles and seahorses. You had me at these weird, underwater people with gills that look like fish people. Not quite mermaids, but I'm just like, I'm there. I don't care if the movie sucks. I want to go see it just for the special effects and the visuals. I'm so there. Cannot
has nothing
wait.
to do with the perv factor of the actor?
That helps. Yes, Jason Moana. I always say Moana. I think I'm saying his last name wrong. But yes, doesn't matter what his name is. Hot.
Yes.
Hot Aquaman. That's his name. Hot Aquaman. That's all we need.
From now on. Yeah.
Which is and I love the interpretation that they did. Instead of it being your stereotypical Hollywood blonde to portray Aquaman, we're like, let's get the tatted up long-haired dude.
Yes, why not?
That. Why not? Why not? That's fun. Yeah,
I'm fully up with, revising, films. So
yes.
It's very interesting because that will lead on to one film that we're reviewing today, actually, about a very different vision of an original concept. But we'll get to that.
Yes.
Get to that later.
Yes.
I haven't seen anything new. I did catch up with some ones that finally made it to rental that I didn't get to see at the cinema. I finally got to see Johnny English Strikes Back.
Oh my God, did you laugh?
Well, I did, but not as hard as I did with the first two. It was wonderful to see Ben Miller reprise his role as Boff, which I thought was really, really good. You see, he wasn't in the second movie. He was in the first one. But compared to the first and the second, it didn't have the huge laughs that the first and second one did, but it was still very enjoyable. I still really liked it. But compared to the first two have you rolling around on the floor. This one had you laughing, but maybe not quite as hard, I thought. I don't know.
Right on.
I don't know. I finally saw the Meg.
Oh my God, that was so fun. I love the ending. I love the ending of the Meg.
Yeah. It was good. If you're going to, how we talked about this before, making a B grade movie, but for a mainstream audience, this movie finally got it right. There've been so many attempts to do this. Piranha, 3D, what was the one with the Jennifer Lopez, Anaconda. I mean, there's been lots of them.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to include things like, Sharknado. That's just caught on with audiences. It's never was, but this finally got it right. They finally worked out how to do it. And so, I take my hat off to it. It's just perfect. It was perfect. It really was. It just ticked all the boxes.
So fun.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And Jason
brilliant.
Statham was really good in that. I thought it was a strange casting at first because I was like, Jason Statham in this kind of crazy over the top B movie, but no, he fit right in and he brought that star power with him. And like I said, this needed an action star to be in that role. And he was really well cast for that. Yeah.
No, it worked really, really, really well. So but that's about all my, movie news as such. Nothing much else to really report. But we do have 3 fantastic movies to review. And should we just get stuck straight into those, Velvet?
Yeah, let's definitely do it.
All right. Now, our first offering is going way back in time. It is an American horror. I use the term horror very loosely. Film from 1940. So, of course, it's in black and white. Stars the amazing Boris Karloff, and it is called The Ape. And this is a really interesting film, actually. Our basic story, all right, to give everyone a quick rundown, is that we have it's a small country town, okay, set in 1940. It's set in its own time. And the doctor, the local doctor, is not really liked by most of the people in the town. They think he's a bit of a city dweller, doesn't really belong there, and they suspect that he likes to experiment with patients rather than just make people better. So he's not really very popular. However, there is a young woman who is in his care who is paralyzed. What do you call it? Quadriplegic,
paraplegic.
Yeah, so just from the waist down. Yeah. Okay, so she can't walk, but still, her upper body works and everything. And anyway, so he is trying to give her the ability to walk again through his experimentation. Now, he did try we learned similar experiments in the big city, but everything went wrong basically, and he lost his license for this experimentation. Hence why he's working in this country town, and he really shouldn't be working if he doesn't have a license, is my understanding. But anyway, so he tries lots of different experimentation. This experimentation will then lead on to even experimenting on people who are about to die, people who can't be saved, and he does use them to help him create this miracle drug that he's trying to make. At the same time, we have a circus which is coming to town, and it has an ape as part of its attraction, as circuses used to have back in those days. Anyway, this ape is treated very, very badly. It kills its handler, and it escapes. Well, everyone in the town is trying to hunt down the ape at the same time the doctor is doing his experiments. Well, the ape will enter the doctor's house. The doctor will kill the ape, but miraculously, the ape is still on the loose killing people. How is this possible? How can the ape still be killing people if the doctor killed it? Well, shall I just give it away? I don't think it really matters, does it?
I think we should build up to it. All
right. But the ape is still killing people, even though the doctor killed it. Now, miraculously, though, all of these bodies that the ape is killing are going back to the doctor's house, where he's then using their bodies to create this serum to help this woman walk. Now, the woman will eventually start to walk. She will actually be cured. But at what cost? What has the doctor been doing? What has the doctor and the ape been doing to get all of these bodies? How is the ape still killing people? And how is the doctor involved? Oh, and it will all come to a giant conclusion at the end. That's basically our movie.
Oh my goodness. Okay, this movie I could not wait to watch. I have to be honest, because what the big reveal that we will actually reveal for you guys. First off, this movie's from 1940. It is the oldest movie that you and I have ever reviewed for this show. Before that, it was Mildred Pierce starring Joan Crawford, which is a cinematic masterpiece. Everybody should definitely watch that movie at least once. But now we have The Ape, 1940, starring horror icon Boris Karloff. So it's great to see him in this movie. He's always flawless in his performances, does what he can, no matter how mediocre the script. But this movie, what also makes it special is, if you've been following along, if you've listened to any of our previous recent episodes, you know that we try to do a film off of the 50 worst films ever made DVD documentary. This film is on there as one of the worst movies ever made. I don't think this movie should be on that list.
I agree. This movie was fun. It was enjoyable.
Yes.
The story is interesting, although pretty silly, but interesting. Boris Karloff was a great actor. The story is okay. The rest of the acting is so-so, but it shouldn't be one of the 50th worst films ever made. Maybe in the top 500 worst, not the top 50.
I agree. So I was really entertained by this movie. And also, this is such a time capsule film. Oh, my God. The fashion in this movie made me I couldn't help it. It cracked me up. The boys, the young children in this movie just look bizarre. The way their pants are fitted and shaped, and that's just the style of the time. It's hard to explain without you seeing the movie, but it just cracked me up. It just looked weird. I was like, their pants are all the way up to their chest. It just looks bizarre. It's just... and this movie is full of like what we would now call character actors. I mean, just like country bumpkins and, farmers, and just they have that very colloquial regional way of speaking that I think is really funny to hear now, because you don't often hear people speak in this manner in American English anymore, although American English is riddled with slang and mispronunciations and tons and tons and tons of regional dialects. The specific type of pronunciations that you hear in this film, it's just also just shows you how language evolves over the decades from this movie from 1940. So it's really fun to watch, just a time capsule film, just the fashion, the mannerisms, the way people were interacting with each other, and just their way of speaking. So, I mean, that alone, it's worth a watch.
Oh, I know. Like you said, Velvet, men, I mean, everybody's wearing pretty much, like even the mechanic, okay, our woman, right? Yes. Her boyfriend, okay, is a mechanic. Mm-hmm. So he goes to work just in pants and a shirt, as he gets dirty and stuff, overalls. But as soon as he finishes work, he puts on a suit. That's his relaxation wear, is a suit. And it's like you said, all the suit pants basically come up to people's chests. The ties are as wide as they are short. Everyone's wearing a hat. It was, and also the sexism of like, but it's quite astounding, but it's still fun at the same time, I thought.
Yeah, you actually get to see a circus in this movie, which I have to admit, that's not something that I think in another couple of decades, that's not something children of the future modern era will probably ever get to experience. I'm sure you've been to circuses as a child, maybe even as an adult.
I would say the old-fashioned circus, of animals. Mm-hmm. Oh, look, I can't speak for other, because I believe they still exist in places like Russia today, but in the modern Western world, I think they basically died out in the early 80s.
I think so.
And then the circuses that would survive would be wholly acrobatic, all the acrobatic side of a circus. I mean, they still have circuses, but they're all about acrobats and amazing stunts. They're not about, what they used to be. Yeah.
I rode an elephant when I was a child. A circus came to town, and I got to sit on the elephant, and it walked 2 steps. And they're like, "You rode an elephant," and I'm like, "Damn! I thought I was going to go for a ride."
Right.
It took 2 steps, but still, how cool is that? Is as a child, I got to sit on an actual elephant. It was a baby elephant, which was pretty amazing. And also now as an adult, I'm just like, that poor baby elephant having all these strangers climb up on its back and then complain about going 2 steps like me. So, but you don't know at the time you're a child, and humanity as a whole is getting better in our treatment towards animals. I mean, it's so funny how I almost want to say how quickly we've evolved, because I mean, animal rights is like, wow, really up there now. Like, there are people that'll save a puppy before they'll save a baby nowadays.
Right. Yes.
Just our love and respect that for animals, the way it's grown. So in this movie, we have the classic example of the circus that probably doesn't treat its animals too well. They're tied to ropes. They don't get a lot of free reign. They're constantly being, their food's restricted. They're constantly being trained, whipped at, and yelled at and ordered around. And then we got the ape. Of course, our classic man in an ape suit.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
who's been treated horribly, and he's had enough. And they show the trainer abusing the ape, and this one guy kind of gets onto the trainer like, you need to be nice to him. And the trainer's like, well, he killed my father. And he's like, well, if you're not careful, he'll kill you too. And then like 5 seconds later, the guy turns his back.
It happens.
Turns his back to the ape cage, and the ape like strangles him to death. And I'm like, oh my God, he got killed like right after he got warned. Anyways,
yeah, I know.
Of course, not by a real ape, not a real ape.
No,
but
a man in a suit.
Definitely a man in a suit. But I have to admit, for a movie from 1940, I thought that ape suit looked pretty good, especially the face. Like, they made it really ferocious. Like, obviously, it's a caricature of an ape, but the face actually moved. It had its mouth opening and closing and showing off the fangs and, just these ferocious teeth. And I was like, oh, wow, they actually got it's not just like a mask. It's actually like almost like animatronic, which for 1940, that's pretty impressive to see in a film.
It was, actually, the effects in this film are actually pretty good. Like you said, the ape is pretty good. It's actually pretty well done for, a B-grade film of the 40s. I thought, wow, actually, yeah. I don't think if they had have done an ape in a mainline cinema release, blockbuster movie in 1940, I don't think they would have done an ape any better, to be truthful.
I don't think so either. No, I was pretty impressed by this. So then there's a fire, and the entire circus burns down, and the ape escapes, and he runs off into the wild, and he ends up at the doctor's house, and they're like, we got to hunt this ape down. He killed his trainer, and he's escaped. And so they're just checking out everybody's houses, and miraculously, he shows up at the doctor, Boris Karloff's house, and the doctor manages to stab the ape in the back, and we think he's killed him, but then later we see the ape running around. We're like, oh, he just injured him, right?
But has he?
Has he?
Yes. Yes. Or is something else going on? Because definitely our doctor is being supplied with lots and lots of victims that he can utilize to create this serum from. And it's very convenient that this ape just happens to be attacking all of these people. I wonder what's going on here.
Okay, here's where the movie gets crazy. Boris Karloff, the doctor, is the ape.
That's right. So when he stabbed the ape, basically what he did was he skinned the ape.
Ew.
Turned it into a suit and puts it on, runs around the countryside killing people to use to create his serum.
That's so many questions, right? Because it's like, it looks just like the ape. It doesn't look like it's a human wearing an ape skin suit. So it's like all the musculature and the skeletal form. I mean, how did he get it to work? He stuffed the suit. And then, oh my God, can you imagine putting an ape head on top of your head? How would that work?
And also, how did this doctor suddenly get this super strength to kill all of these people? He doesn't put on the ape skin and suddenly then get the muscular power of an ape.
Yeah, because the whole time when he's the doctor, he's just kind of like this old, an elderly man. You can tell his days of, sprinting miles is behind him. He's, slow moving, not frail health, but, he's not going to be, like you said, super strength running around killing people.
I know. It's, he does. Anyway, what he is doing does send up some suspicion about, well, not about the ape side of it, but about the medical side of it. and he is visited by a doctor from the big city who recognizes who he is. And then anyway, so Boris Karloff takes this doctor off to show him that this serum is actually working, to which our other doctor realizes, oh God, it really is working. It really is working. So he just says to him, okay, no worries, Boris, slap on the back, keep up the good work, keep me informed about how things go. Now, hang on, we need to step back here a second. Didn't Boris Karloff lose his medical license?
Yes, he did.
What is this doctor just sort of saying? Oh, okay, so you're not a doctor anymore, but we'll just let you experiment on this woman. I mean, seriously.
Okay, and also there's I don't know if you noticed during that scene, so he's showing, Boris Karloff is basically showing this guy from, I don't know, the board of medical directors, whatever that guy is. He's showing him these guinea pigs that he supposedly cured, like, oh, before they couldn't walk and all this, look, now they're running around. Did you notice that one of them falls off the table?
Sorry.
Poor little guinea pig. I hope it's okay, or it was okay. Anyways, no, I was really entertained by this movie, and the whole time I kept going, okay, yeah, this is obviously ridiculous. Once you watch the entire movie, of course, the premise is ridiculous. Like we said, like, what the hell? He overpowered an ape, and now he's wearing the ape suit, running around killing people, and he's collecting spinal fluid, and he's curing this girl of her paralysis, and now she can walk, and all of a sudden he's super strong. It's ridiculous, but it is so entertaining.
Yeah.
So many of the movies that we have watched from the 50 worst films list were groan-inducing. They were painful to watch. They were boring. They were nonsensical. They weren't entertaining at all. This movie is the complete opposite of that. It is so fun. It's crazy. It's stupid, but it's fun.
It really is fun. And I did actually, for quite a while, not know whether it was him in the ape suit or if he was... I mean, I actually thought at first he was controlling the ape somehow or other.
That's what it looks like for a second. I was like, oh, wow, is he like controlling it? Yeah,
so,
which would have been crazy too.
So I actually think for 1940, the reveal that he is the ape is really actually well done. I mean, you sort of realise it's going to happen in the end, but... This is a 1940 B film. I think they kept the suspense going really, really well. For a cheap film, I was stunned at how well they managed to keep the suspense.
Yes, I was too.
Really well done. How this is put into the 50th worst films ever, I don't get. I really don't. I mean, one, I don't agree, but I just don't get it. This is a great little fun film.
Like all the other movies, all the other movies that we've reviewed from the list deserve to be on that list, but this one definitely does not. This one definitely goes into the so bad it's good category because it's ridiculous, but it's really entertaining, really well made. Boris Karloff is great in it. I do have a question though. I didn't understand why he all of a sudden turned into a homicidal maniac. That is definitely a flaw in the writing of the story. I didn't think it was warranted. I didn't think it made much sense. Well, then again, I guess he was so desperate to progress to a cure, he was willing to do whatever. Okay, there's your reason. Okay, that makes sense.
I think the thing is that he realizes that this serum he's created does work. And so, but he needs more of it. And he's so desperate to cure this woman because we should point out too that his daughter died.
Oh, that's right. She died. Yes.
Okay. So in many ways, he's viewing this young woman as his daughter to a degree.
Yes.
And, and I just think he's so desperate to find this cure that he's prepared to kill a few people in order to do it. I mean,
nice.
It's not the first time we've seen this in movies. Well, it's actually not even the first time we've seen it in real life. You know that idea: kill one person to save a million. You know, it's an age-old story, isn't it? You know,
yes.
What is one life worth to society. But it's wow. Even though the fact that you might actually be killing the next Albert Einstein or the next right. the next Gandhi or the next, but it's I mean, I think that's the reason why anyway.
That makes sense. That's justifiable. I mean, for the movie, not for real life. Yeah,
not for real life.
But I always have to be careful when I say stuff like that. Like, oh yeah, I totally agree. No, wait, not in real life. Agree. I agree in movie world. Yeah. But there's a really bad scene. I know you probably caught this too. Like, oh, this scene's so bad. The scene where the doctor is talking to the patient's mother, the one that he's hoping to cure paralysis, and he has a test tube full of the serums that will cure her paralysis. And he is talking to her and he's like, this is the cure. He lays the bottle of the fucking test tube of serum on the table while he's talking to her and lets it roll off the table and break.
Yes.
Really? Seriously? A doctor would never do that. They would know not to just randomly place a test tube on the table and watch it roll off and break. I hated that part.
Yeah.
I hated that.
Unfortunately, we see this in movies over and over and over again, though, don't we? It's like, they need an excuse for something to happen. So we need an excuse for him to run out of serum. It's a bit like, I remember that Dustin Hoffman, whatever, the movie Outbreak. About Ebola.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that was it. Dustin Hoffman. It is Dustin Hoffman. Yeah. Now I'm doing it. I'm like,
I know, trying to think. Is that his name?
Names. Has one of those names, and you're like, I think that's his name.
Yeah. And
I remember
and in that, there's the outbreak. Basically, part of how the outbreak happens is there's a lab technician who's spinning blood. In those. I forgot. I'm not a chemist. I don't know what all the names are. But when they
I forget what it's called.
Put the stuff in those spinners, right? About. Anyway, and so he opens it up and puts his hand in to grab it before it stops spinning. So it shatters and spatters blood everywhere. Now, I'm sorry, but no. Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's like, yeah.
No.
There's always in a movie got to be a simple, quick excuse for something to happen to drive the story along. And I think, in real life, pretty unlikely, but in a movie, it's movie world. You need a simple.
Right,
and the other problem too is you need something that's simple and quick. Otherwise, the story is going to drag on. Right? So,
oh my God,
he drops the serum. Oh my God, I need to make more. How am I going to make more? Oh, I need bodies. Yeah, so
I'll just run around in the fucking
ape suit, killing people because that's the obvious
ape costume and kill people, and so I can get more spinal fluid serum. I guess that's what he was doing.
I know. I know. The other thing too is there is a very interesting character too in this movie who is I don't know what you would call him. He's not the bank manager, but he's a loan shark. And but he's a senior,
that's right.
He's a senior person in society. Like, he's high up. He owns lots of real estate. He's very influential and all the rest of it. And he's an absolute asshole. He's like he evicts people for virtually no reason. He wants, even though this ape is killing people, he wants the police to stop looking for the ape and go and evict his tenants instead.
Damn.
Yeah, he complains about the doctor not fitting in, and it's even pointed out to him. It's like, hang on, you're one of the most evil people in this town, yet you're complaining about the doctor. It's
oh my God,
and even
so
many of the people in the town pointed out, it's like, I don't think you've got any grounds to stand on here. You're actually pretty bad yourself.
It's really unclear exactly what it is that the doctor has done that everybody dislikes him for, because a lot of it just sounds like rumors and unfounded rumors. And honestly, in the beginning of the movie, before you really see what's going on and before he becomes the ape and starts killing people to steal their spinal fluid, at the beginning, I feel bad for him in the beginning, because there's even that scene where there's just some of the local neighborhood children, some little boys, throw rocks at his house and break a window. And I'm like, is this how kids used to act? Like, is this normal behavior for back
don't
then?
know. I don't know.
I hope not. I mean, geez Louise, you're throwing rocks at his house and breaking a window? What the fuck? I was shocked.
The interesting thing is that in the beginning, he's not what the townsfolk are complaining, about. They're sort of like, they're saying he doesn't fit in. He's there's this theory he experiments on people, right? Now, he's not doing that at the start. But the thing is that as the movie progresses, the townsfolk are absolutely 100% correct. He is experimenting on the townsfolk.
Oh, my God.
So Boris Karloff actually doesn't start the movie as the person they're accusing him of being, but he ends the movie as the person they're accusing him of being, which is interesting. Yeah, it's just an interesting
Ain't that crazy?
Note. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ain't that crazy?
Yeah. But we do have a happy ending. I will say. It's
well, not happy for Boris Karloff.
Well, not for Boris. Well, no, actually, I would disagree with that, actually, because
okay.
Because Boris Karloff is eventually caught. Okay,
yes,
and there is obviously our big reveal. But I think he's happy to be caught. He's happy to be. It's because for him, it's like the serum has worked. I have found a cure. And now it's time for me to rest. It's almost like, now it's just time for me to go. And also
he gets to see his patient walk.
Yeah. And it's like,
see her walk.
And now it's okay. Now I can die now. It's all right. It's because my whole life since the death of my daughter has been for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to find this cure. Now that I've found this cure and I can physically see it works, I'm happy to pass on. It's over, right? And so I think he is happy.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off.
No, it's all good.
And I was just going to say, and this is one of the 50 worst movies ever made.
Yeah. No.
I definitely don't agree. Don't agree.
No way.
No.
This is a good film. This is a really good film. It's better than some of the schmuck that comes out of Hollywood these days, to be honest.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth?
I'll tell you what. I'll rate this above Pearl Harbor. I'll rate this above Armageddon. I reckon this is a good film.
Yeah, for what it is very entertaining. It is a good movie. Is it perfect? No, it is silly. It's crazy. The whole, he is an ape running around killing people. But it is so entertaining. You really have to see it. Especially if you love any kind of old-timey, black and white horror films. Yeah, and if you are a fan of Boris Karloff and you haven't seen this one, you definitely want to check this one out. We've all seen him as Frankenstein, and we've seen his other iconic
Frankenstein's
roles.
monster.
Excuse me, Frankenstein's monster. Thank you. Oh, I can't believe I said that. Frankenstein's monster. That's right. But yeah, if you're a Boris Karloff fan, you definitely got to see this one, The Ape, because this is just. I'm surprised not more people know about this movie, to be honest. This is actually pretty wild for what it is.
Oh, yeah. No. I really liked it. I really, really, really enjoyed this movie. Of these 50 worst films that we're looking at, some of them I've still really enjoyed because they were just so cheesy, But this one is different to any of the others we've come across, I think, in the sense that I actually think this stands up as a good film. I don't just like it because of its cheese factor or something like that. I really like it. You know, I really like it as a film.
I like it a lot. I do too. And it's short too. It's only an hour and 2 minutes. So very short, very quick watch. But it kind of feels like an hour and a half movie because so much happens and there's so many characters and it's a pretty thick plot for an hour-long movie. But it's not confusing. It's not convoluted. And it is silly, and it's not really campy, though. It does have a very serious tone in it. Even though we have this, man in a gorilla suit, it doesn't come off as funny. It's really well done for the type of movie this is, and especially for the time it was made, 1940. Really impressive, actually, I think.
Oh, look, to be honest with you, if you had have upped the rating of some of the supporting cast, if you had have put Cary Grant in the role as the Doctor and produced this in 1940 as an hour and a half long film, I think people would actually say this is a moving movie with a very interesting storyline and actually saying something very interesting about modern medicine. It's this movie actually could have been so much more, with a little bit more money. The story and everything is really good.
Yeah, I can't believe a valid point.
I can't believe I'm saying that about it. I just say I can't believe I'm saying that about a movie which is called The Ape. Where part of the plot is Boris Karloff dresses in an ape skin to kill people, but if you see it, you'll know what Velvet and I are talking about. If you see it, it's yeah.
Yeah, and you also brought up an interesting point, is that there definitely is commentary on medicine in this movie, and at what point is it okay to experiment to get results, to further, to advance the techniques that we currently use in modern medicine? Obviously, we don't want to have somebody running around in an ape suit killing people to steal the ingredients, but the point is he was held back from advancing with this technology that he knew would help people. So, really actually a lot more going on in this movie once you get past the silly premise. It's a great argument. Well, really interesting.
It is.
Very ethically conflicted type, when it's like, okay, what are we allowed to experiment on? Obviously we don't want to experiment on people, but this movie does bring up that ethical question.
Well, I suppose in a more modern sense, it's like experimentation on animals. Now, I don't think, there are some people that support experimentation on animals for makeup because they just don't give a shit. But I think most, okay, we'll move on from that. But then
I feel you. I agree with you 100%. I know where you're going with that. And I agree with you.
But then there is this idea of experimentation on animals. Like, what if we can find a cure for cancer? What if we can find a cure for HIV? All of these different things. And it has come through animal experimentation. It's a really interesting point. I don't want to say that I stand on one side or the other here. I'm kind of a bit of both, actually. I think in some cases it's all right, in other cases it isn't. But this movie plays with that idea.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah, it's pretty wild. But I thought I was going to go into this, and I thought I was going to be, oh my God, this movie was so stupid. It's so bad. It deserves to be on the 50 worst movies ever made list. No, it doesn't.
Not at all. Not at all.
Shouldn't be on there at all. Yeah, shouldn't be on there at all. It's amazing. Yes. I did not expect that. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised.
So, all right, if we're going to rate this one, unless there's anything else you wanted to bring up about The Ape. All right. So how are you going to rate this on the Eric Roberts scale, Velvet?
Okay, on the Eric Roberts scale of 1 to 5 Erics, 1 being the worst of the worst and 5 being cinematic masterpiece, I'm actually going to give this a 3.5, above average entertainment.
Okay, well, I'm going to work in the realm of Warren rather than the real world realm. okay, as my ratings often do. And because of that, I'm going to just put up a couple of little things. First of all, this is a B-grade movie without a lot of money, okay? It's made in 1940. Because of that, because of what they had to work with and how much money they've got, I'm going to give this a 5.
I was debating, honestly, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to let Warren do his Warren meter, and I'll do the Eric Roberts meter. But no, I definitely think that rating is justified as well.
Yes, because it delivers everything it promises 100%. And that's all a movie is designed to do. You know, as long as a movie has delivered 100% everything that it wanted to, I can't fault it. That's the thing, you know. I think it's for the genre it's set in. It's B-grade horror. It's 100% because it ticks everything. I can't fault it. As crazy as that sounds, with a movie called The Ape. And I think Velvet's microphone is...
There we go.
Oh, no, it's
there
back.
We go.
Oh, it's
Can
back.
you hear me?
Yeah,
there we
back.
go.
There
I'm having some connectivity issues over here. I think somebody's partying with their Spotify soundtrack in the background. I think it's draining on our Wi-Fi. But no, we should be okay now. Should be okay now.
That's all right. So,
no.
So there we go. So look, basically, check this one out. I really think you'll enjoy it. It's readily available. You can find it on YouTube. I really say to people, if you like classic old black and white horror, which is not horror in the modern sense of horror, but, you know, horror films, you'll really enjoy this one. This is a Sunday afternoon, sit back and just enjoy yourself. It's a lot of fun. And you'll also come out of it going, wow, actually, that made me think about something I hadn't thought about before. So
it was fantastic.
This is a Sunday, this is a rainy Sunday afternoon, you know, classic, I think.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right. Well, we will take a quick break and we will be back with actually, I think, is our most controversial movie of this week's podcast. So we will be right back. And we are back, and a lot of people will probably know what movie, or what of many movies, we're about to talk about now from that piece of music, because that was, of course, the theme of The Saint. And yes, we are doing another Saint picture. Now, we did The Saint, the 2016 version of The Saint, several podcasts ago. I can't remember when we actually did that one, to be honest now, Velvet.
I think it was actually beginning of the year.
Earlier in the year, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like in January of this year, January of 2018.
And for Saint fans, basically, it had been a long wait, because 2016 was, of course, the last movie of The Saint. But before then, the only offering people had on film was from 1997. And that's the version we're going to be talking about this week. The 1997 version starring, of course, Val Kilmer and Elizabeth Shue. Now, this was a big Hollywood blockbuster. It was, $68 million to make, with a return of around $170 million at the box office. So it did extraordinarily well. But at the same time, it is the most controversial Saint of all the TV series and of the radio plays and of the movies. This is the most controversial because it is the most unsaint-like movie that there actually is. And a lot of people have basically tried to explain this movie as this is the prequel to everything else. In other words, where we know the character of Simon Templar, the Saint, this is, the movie starts with him being Simon Templar, the movie ends with him being the Saint. So in other words, all the movies, all the books, all the TV shows, they're all meant to start where this movie finishes, if that makes sense to people.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit weird in the sense that it's a prequel. And a lot of people sort of said, well, you're going to make, there'd been no Saint since the 1980s. You come along in 1997 and you make one and you choose to make a prequel. So it was very, very controversial. So anyway, should we just very quickly explain who the Saint is before we describe the movie?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because this is still a new character to me. So there's a lot of people, I think, that are not familiar with the franchise. Like, we've heard of it, but we don't really know much about it. So
yes.
Definitely.
So the character of the Saint is basically, he's a gentleman thief, is the best way to put it. He's an Englishman who lives in London, but he's very worldly travelled. He travels all over the world and commits crimes all over the world. But he's also a Robin Hood type character. This is the normal Saint anyway. This movie, we'll get into the details of it in a minute. It's a bit different. So basically, he steals basically from other criminals. He doesn't steal from ordinary people. And what he does is the money that he steals, he only keeps 10% and then he donates 90% to charity. And that's every crime he commits. Okay. Now, it was all started basically back in the late 20s by the author Leslie Charteris. Now, he was a Singaporean half Singaporean, half British. He invented this character. It turned into 40-odd books, I think, have been written. There's been now, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 movies, something like that. There's been 3 TV series. And then there's also been, through the 50s, a huge amount of radio plays, almost 100 episodes of radio plays. So this is a very, very established character, okay? So, as we said, he is a gentleman thief. Now, of English background, very upper class, very well educated. He likes nice things. You know, everything has to be nice. He's always dressed immaculately. He will, have a very expensive watch. His shoes would always be polished. He'd be in a Savile Row suit. He's a bit James Bond without the Bondiness, if you like, okay? And remember, too, that this character predates Bond by about 30 years, all right? So he was the original. Now, the problem, too, with this movie is that the Saint has a lot of friends and enemies who are always popping up. He has enemies who will always pop up. He has police who are always after him. He has his love interest, and he has the people he calls the Halos, who are like his assistants that help him. Now, in this movie, there's none of them. None of them are in this movie.
I was just getting ready to say, I'm like, did I watch the wrong movie?
Yeah, it's like,
because I was like, wait, where are all these characters? I missed that part. Okay, as you said, they are not in this movie. Okay,
right. So his girlfriend Patricia Home is not in this movie. Inspector Peel, who is the one who is or Teal, I should say, who is always trying to hunt him down. He is in this movie, but it's a pretty small role, okay? We don't have the FBI detective who's always after him. We don't have the Saints' Halos. They're not in it. We don't have his arch nemesis, Marius. He's not in this. So it was very, very weird. But then the whole idea is it's meant to be a prequel. All right, so that's a rough idea of who Simon Templar the Saint is. The movie. Okay, so we actually get a backstory in this one. We actually get to see how Simon Templar grew up. And supposedly in this movie, it's in an orphanage. Okay, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever to the stories, all right? But anyway, in this, he grows up in an orphanage. He goes off and becomes this criminal. But in this movie, he steals money purely for himself. He doesn't give any money to charity at all. And he is trying to hit the $50 million mark. I think that's where he says, when I hit $50 million, I will retire. Now, he meets up with some Russians who are wanting to steal this new concept, which has been invented supposedly by an English scientist who sounds very American. Oh, well, she's American but living in London, and Emma Russell, who is played by Elizabeth Shue. Now, she has invented this concept, I think they call it cold fusion, which is free energy for the world, non-pollutive free energy forever. Now, these Russians want to steal it. Okay, because they want to take it and then use it to take control of Russia and, of course, become the richest people in the world. So the Saint takes on the job of stealing the formula from Dr. Emma Russell. The problem is that he falls for Emma Russell, but he still steals the formula. He gives it to the Russians. It turns out the formula's incomplete. He then needs to meet up with the good doctor again to try to get the rest of the formula so he can get paid. They meet up in Russia. He then decides that what they'll do is team up together and then basically they can sell the formula themselves. Of course, the doctor is horrified by this. They then still will stay teamed up. They'll be chased by the Russian mafia all through Moscow and all the rest of it until they can finally escape from Russia. And then, of course, the big reveal, will the doctor give free energy to the world? Will the Saint actually still try to sell and keep the secret? Or will Simon Templar be turned by Dr. Emma Russell and become the character, the Robin Hood character that we now know as the Saint? There you go. Was that an explanation? I think that was a rough idea of what the movie is about. What were your thoughts on the movie, Velvet?
Oh, my goodness. I enjoyed this movie so much. I really didn't expect to go in being that impressed by it, but I had so much fun watching this movie. Val Kilmer is so young and handsome in this, really in his prime of his acting career. And he recently beat cancer, so he'll be making a comeback. So good for him. Glad to hear that he's making a comeback not only in his acting career, but in life. But I was actually really impressed by his range in this movie. He plays so many different characters because he's constantly having to put on disguises. Like he'll, have a Russian accent, he'll have a mustache, he'll have long hair, he'll have a French accent, he'll have, an Australian accent, just all these different accents and characters that he plays, and just the way he changes his body language and his mannerisms to always constantly trick people so they don't know who the saint is or what exactly he looks like. And when you finally find out that his motivations are pure-hearted, you almost miss it in the end if you're not really paying attention. He's driving down the road in a car, and he's got the top down, and he's got the radio up, and the radio's talking about all these mysterious high-dollar, multi-million-dollar donations, and you realize all that money that he's stolen, that $50 million that he wanted so he could get out, was so that he could donate it to these organizations. So really great. You almost miss it if you sneeze on that part. And the radio announcer is actually voiced by, I believe, the original Saint. Well, you know better than me.
Yeah, not the original Saint, but by Sir Roger Moore, who.
Moore.
He is probably the most famous actor to play the Saint. But he's not the original, not by any chance. But so that was a nice little touch. Yes, most definitely.
Absolutely. I love that. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, and Val Kilmer actually turned down returning to the Batman franchise so that he could do this movie. And I think that was a good choice, to be honest. Even though, unfortunately, this movie didn't take off as a franchise right away. In the 90s, I'm sure they had sequels planned and all of that, but it didn't really happen. But I love that he did this movie because it was so exciting, so fun. I really fell in love with his character. And also Elizabeth Shue I really liked in this movie. She is one of those actresses for me. For some reason, she's kind of nameless, kind of faceless. I know she's been around forever. She's been in lots of famous movies. But for some reason, anytime I hear Elizabeth Shue, I'm always like, who?
Yes.
But I really like her performance in this film, and I think her and Val Kilmer had really good chemistry on screen. They both kind of play these kind of like awkward people that haven't really connected with anyone, but they connect with each other like instantly, even though she initially connects with the lie, the persona that he's putting up to attract her. I really like this movie.
It's as I said, it is very controversial because dyed-in-the-wool Saint fans have a problem with this movie because they say, well, it's not until the last 5 minutes that Simon Templar in this movie becomes the Saint. So you've got an hour and a half of him being this criminal and only 5 minutes of him being the Saint. And they have a real problem with that, But in a sense, as we said earlier, if you view it as the prequel, the birth of the Saint, then it's a good film. But if you want to watch it from the perspective of you want to see Simon Templar, the Saint, no, it's a terrible film. But as a prequel, I think it holds up. I really think it does. Some of the interesting things, too, that we should say is that there'd been lots of attempts to try to get the Saint back up since the 1980s, which was the last time we'd actually seen the Saint. And one of the things that actually almost happened is that Sir Roger Moore himself almost tried to actually get a brand new TV series up in the 90s called The Saint, which would actually star, if you're ready for this, Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, wow.
Right. But it never actually, it never actually took, or it never actually happened. But then when this movie then finally did get the go ahead and we would see the Saint coming back, do you want to hear about some of the people that they originally wanted before Val Kilmer?
Absolutely.
You ready for this? Hugh Grant.
I don't see it.
I could see Hugh Grant as the Saint, but I can't see him in a prequel role to the Saint. Do you know what I mean? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But then it gets really weird. Mel Gibson.
That's really problematic, isn't it?
Kevin Costner. A bit too American, I think. A bit too American. I think so,
yeah. I had to agree with you on that one.
Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp turned down the role.
I just don't see him in that movie. No, I don't see him in this role.
But weirdest,
fine actor, but I don't see him as the Saint.
The weirdest one of all, okay? Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, no.
They were going. Are you ready for this?
No.
They were going to make Simon Templar Austrian. How the fuck
goodness.
would that work? I mean, look, Val Kilmer, he doesn't really sound English, but he sounds kind of mid-Atlantic. I think, would that be fair?
Right.
He doesn't sound American, but he doesn't sound English.
Right.
He sounds sort of mid-Atlantic, right?
Okay.
But
yeah.
Arnold, so you can sort of get away with that, I suppose. And remember, too, people like Vincent Price have played the Saint, okay? So the Saint has been played with an American voice before. That's not unusual. But an Austrian accent, how in God's name were they going to pull that off?
But also how fucking muscular he is.
I know.
It's like he would stand out. He would be so easy to find. He just would not be able to blend in. He couldn't just put on a wig and a mustache because his stature is just so massive. You know, former Mr. Universe. He just can't hide in the crowd.
I know.
No.
It's
No.
just yeah. So that's a little bit of behind the scenes stuff about this movie. The really nice thing too about this movie is the budget. So when it's shot in London, they're really in London. They're not actually in downtown California. When they're in Moscow, they really are shooting in Moscow. They're once again not in downtown Los Angeles. So it was really, really nice that they actually went to the locations to actually shoot it. And it really holds up because so often, I mean, it's like, when we did the 2016 version, because of the budget, when they were meant to be in Moscow, I swear I could see palm trees in the background, right? So where the beauty of this one is that they're really in Red Square. They're really running through Red Square, so it really added to the movie, I thought.
Definitely.
The
the budget on this is fantastic. It is action-packed. There's lots of explosions. There's lots of villainous characters. It's a fun movie. It's wild. It's crazy. Like evidently there was one version of the script where they were supposed to be in Moscow and something about Elizabeth Shue's character was supposed to be like on a helicopter in a wheelchair, and like they managed to like throw her out of the helicopter and she lands in this wheelchair like by the Kremlin or something crazy, like just something. It was like over the top, and I'm like, dang, I'm glad they didn't shoot that version of the movie. It just would have been too much action. Yes. Too much action.
Yeah. But look, I really like it, and as I said, as a prequel, I think it works. Although I think the bat story of the Saint is ridiculous. The idea of him growing up in an orphanage, I thought that was just...
That is so sad. That is like the saddest beginning to any movie. They kill a child, people. It is so sad.
Yeah.
I was like... And this is why he's like never been in love, never has a girlfriend, because this young little girl that he was going to get a kiss from when he's like, they're both like, I don't know, 9 years old. And she just like falls and dies. And it's like, oh no. And now he's scarred for life, still waking up in his 30s in a nightmarish sweat, remembering that horrible experience. I'm like, oh man, I'm like, that is a terrible tone to set for your movie. And then it becomes so happy and action packed and romantic. And I'm like,
I know.
damn, though. But that beginning is rough. And I'm like, what was up with the fucking like priest at this orphanage? Did he just hate children? Then why the hell are you working at an orphanage if you hate children and you just want to be cruel to them? I don't know.
I don't know.
Crazy character.
There's a lot of people who've gone to Catholic schools who'll tell you about how that,
right?
I'm not having to go with Catholics. Please believe me. But, speak to anyone that went to a Catholic boarding school. They'll tell you some horror stories. So, nothing against Catholics. Don't worry. I'm not having to go with the religion. But the other thing too, which is, I think interesting about this is that the director here, Philip Noyce, who's an Australian too, actually, by the way, try to come up with new ideas in this movie. For instance, this idea of he's called the Saint. Now, in the original stories and in every other imagining of this story, he's called the Saint because he gives 90% of his, thefts to charity. That's why he's the saint, okay? But in this one, the name comes about because he uses phony names based off saints through history. Now, that's just all made up. That's nothing to do, with the story at all. The symbol of the halo that the saint has, that comes about because Elizabeth Shue gives him a pin that she got when she was at Catholic school. Now it's all that's just nonsense to this character, I mean, it works in the movie. Don't get me wrong. If you just watch this as a standalone movie, it works. But if you know all the backstory, you've seen the TV series, you've read the books, you've seen the other movies, you're sitting there going, "What the fuck?" What the fuck was Philip Noyce thinking, when he did that? But anyway, he did, and it is the reason why it's a bit controversial. But as a standalone film, I think this is a great action-adventure film. I really do. I really do. Although, I have heard Ian Ogleby, who played Simon Temple of the Saint in the 1970s, absolutely can Val Kilmer in this film. Yeah, because it strayed so much from the story, and absolutely canned it. But, hey, that's life.
What can you do?
Yeah.
What can you do? Yeah, prequels are always tricky. Honestly, because I have no nostalgia for the Saint, and everything I know about the Saint I've learned from you. Because I don't have that attachment to the franchise and the source material, I think that's also what made this movie so enjoyable for me. Because for me, this really just came across as a standalone movie instead of a prequel. So I didn't have those expectations or those disappointments that you do have when you're familiar with the source material. So if you're coming in like me and you're fresh to this franchise, you'll probably really like this as just an action comedy romance type movie. But yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from. If you're a hardcore Saint fan, no, you're probably going to be like, what the hell? Like, they didn't have all the little helpers. And, I was like, helpers? What helpers? Did I watch the wrong movie? What are you talking about? So
yeah, and the other thing, too, that's a bit weird about it is that supposedly, if you want to use Saint lore, how we always use that term lore, for a franchise or a TV show or a story or whatever, Patricia Home is meant to be the only woman that the Saint has ever loved. So what the hell is this character, Dr. Russell, played by Elizabeth Shue? Because he's clearly in love with her, right?
Right.
So it that doesn't make a lot of sense, and that's why I'm saying that there are so many issues here, with this, because even as a prequel, it still has issues then following into the next story, so
right,
yeah. But then again, the fact is that if you are a big Saint fan, you will know exactly what we're talking about. So it doesn't matter. We're really talking to people who are not big Saint fans, who don't really know much about the story. And if that's the case, if you want to just watch this as a standalone film, you'll love it. It's a great, great piece of late 90s escapism, action adventure, I think. With also, if you want to watch that sort of movie which doesn't have a death toll of 82, right? Because this movie is really, really nice. Nobody dies in it. Well, a couple, but but it's
nameless, faceless villains.
But this is not like a Bond film, especially like Pierce Brosnan, who was killing 200 people a movie.
Oh goddamn!
Oh, did you know Pierce Brosnan has the highest kill rate of any James Bond?
I never realized that. Holy cow! Wow.
Here's a little fact for you. In the 4 films that Pierce Brosnan made, his Bond killed more people in those 4 movies than every other Bond film combined.
Jeez. My God. The man's an animal.
Yeah, I know.
An animal.
I know. I know. So
he's got that bloodlust.
And it is unfortunate too that sometimes the Saint gets muddled up with James Bond, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Roger Moore played both roles. You know, he played both the Saint and he played James Bond. And the two characters are so different. They have nothing in common at all. I mean, basically, one is a hitman for the British government. The other one is a gentleman thief who gives 90% of his thefts to charity. And you know, they're very, very different people, even though they seem to get lumped into the same group all the time for some reason. And they really shouldn't.
No, definitely not. I agree.
You know?
Every actor's portrayal in a franchise always brings something different to the table, and that's always challenging for a franchise because we don't want the franchise to end, yet the majority of us are reluctant to accept the next person that steps in because it's not going to be the same. I mean, and so not just the actor changes. I mean, the writers change, the directors change, even the production companies and the budgets. I mean, if you want a franchise to keep on going, you have to be open to change. And I mean, Doctor Who is a perfect example of that because they even have it written into the story that the Doctor will change every couple of years. And then, of course, we've already mentioned James Bond. We can't have, we even made the joke in a previous podcast. Can you imagine if Sean Connery, had been James Bond this entire time? He's in his 80s now. Can you imagine him still playing James Bond? I know. We have to be open to that change. And the prequel is just one way of extending that franchise and adding to the lore of the story. But also prequels do have that certain liberty that because it is the prequel, they can take a lot more creative license with the story because they're basically saying the story has not happened yet. So we don't really have to follow any rules. So that's why prequels always get the most criticism because people are like, well, they didn't do this and they didn't do that and they didn't have the helpers. Well, because it hasn't happened yet. This character is coming into fruition. He has not become the character that we know yet. This is his beginning. So
yes. Now, there's some other news too for Saint fans, if you're not aware of it, is we know that we had the movie in 2016, which was, I think, a fantastic little film. I know Velvet didn't like it a lot, but I think that had a lot to do with production values and money and budget, though, didn't it? More than anything else. It was meant to be the telly movie for a brand new Saint TV show, which got canned. Okay, it never happened. Right, so now that movie has to stand as a standalone Saint movie. But Paramount Pictures, there is still talk, and in fact, there is some pre-production stuff going on of a new reboot, of The Saint. It is, are you ready for this? Do you know who is rumoured?
Who?
Chris Pratt.
Huh. I'm debating how I feel about that. I can definitely see him in the role. I think, I could see him in the role. What do you think? You are more familiar with this franchise. What do you think?
Well, I think that Chris Pratt could easily pull off the idea of the gentleman criminal who can still be rough and tough when needed. Someone who would be prepared to kill someone who was absolutely evil, but at the same time was a gentleman thief who was actually cared more about charity. Like building charity is just as important as his personal wealth. So I could see him in the role actually quite easily, to be truthful. I think he'd work well. So I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, that this actually does happen.
I think that would be really cool. I would really like that, I think. Yeah. I could definitely... Yeah.
Now, the one thing that we should also mention, as much as we are saying that we really do like this, is that Val Kilmer was actually nominated for a Golden Raspberry for this movie.
Really?
Yeah, which I think is a bit harsh, to be truthful. I think his portrayal... Okay, forget about the writing, the directing, so I have some problems with that, which mentioned all this before. But of him himself acting in this role, I think he's quite good.
Yeah, I think his performance is really good. Interesting. Yeah, I guess this is just going to be the night of movies we thought were going to be awful. They're actually good.
I know, yes.
Because, yeah, again, I don't think that's justified at all. The Ape should not be on the 50 worst movies list, and Val Kilmer should not be nominated for a Razzie for his performance in The Saint.
No,
I don't think that's the. Maybe it's not. Maybe somebody doesn't think it's a good script, but I don't think you should criticize the main actor for that. That's not his fault.
Oh, absolutely not. You've got to blame the director and the writers and the producers for the direction of where this went. That's fine. I understand that because people say this is not a proper Saint film, right? So I get that.
Right.
But you don't blame Val Kilmer. I think he did it really well. I don't have a problem with. I know there are a lot of people who say that the Saint must be very English. All right. But I don't have a problem with this mid-Atlantic idea of the Saint because he's been played so far by at least 3 Americans, right? So the die's already been cast. You know, it's okay for the Saint to be. I mean, I wouldn't make him somebody, let's say, from, I don't know, Boston, you know, with that very distinct accent or something. But to give him a mid-Atlantic accent, I think it's all right. I don't think it's a problem, to be honest.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I know that traditionally it's been very, very English, but times can move on. Things can change. James Bond might be black. You know, things can move on and change. The doctor's a woman, you know. I mean, things can change, and I don't really have a problem with that. I think Leslie Charteris would have had a problem with it, though. I'll tell you that much. But anyway. Now, the other thing, too, that's interesting is that this is the first time, because you know how there's always the thing in Bond films about what watch does James Bond wear? You know, like there's a huge thing about it, right? What watch is he wearing in this movie, right? Because everyone has to go off and get the latest James Bond watch. Well, traditionally, we never really knew what watch he wore, right? It was never something that was done. In the TV series with Roger Moore, he wears an Omega DeVille because we get to see it all the time, okay? Whenever he, you know, looks at his watch to see what the time is, you know, those sorts of shots. Yeah. And we see it's an Omega DeVille. Now, but in this movie, it's quite interesting. They did the same thing where they actually kind of announce what watch. And I do wonder if this was kind of a bit of a play to the fact that Bond was doing it, so they decided the Saint should do it as well. And in this, they actually read out the name of what watch it is. Like they say, it's a Boulevard automatic chronograph, right? They actually say it, right? It's a bit like it's a bit like in Casino Royale when Bond is sitting with Vesper on the train, and she says, "What watch do you wear, Mr. Bond?" And you know, I bet you it's a Rolex, and he goes, "No, it's an immediate speed. No, it's an immediate Seamaster." Oh my God! Right? He actually names the watch, right? And this was kind of the same, and I'm thinking, God, is that product placement or is that product placement or what? You know. So everybody so all the Saint fans had to race off and buy, you know. So I said Bulvar, sorry, I meant Bulgari, sorry, a Bulgari automatic chronograph. So, which also brings up another point. Can I just raise? Because in this, when you're racing through Red Square, okay, and he hides in the river in the middle of winter. So you imagine what that's like, okay? And she pulls him out, and then they go off. They find this place that they're hiding, and then after that, they meet up with these art dealers, and they don't have any cash on them. So she says, "I'll get you out of the city, and you know, if you give me your watch." Well, he's been wearing a Bulgari automatic chronograph. He's been sitting in a 0-degree river. That watch is stuffed. That watch is not working, all right? If you've ever seen a Bulgari automatic chronograph, it ain't going to cope with those sorts of conditions. It's not a Rolex Dive Master. It is not going to cope with that. So, yeah, anyway. I'm so digressing on shit, aren't I? I'm so digressing on stuff. So we should get back to the movie. Back to the movie.
This movie is very romantic, which I did not expect to see so much romance in this movie. It really kind of made me swoon on some scenes because he's really wooing this girl, which is sad because you realize he's getting her to trust him just so he can steal her formula for cold fusion. But then you realize he really does have feelings for her, and then it just becomes this passionate love affair where they're kind of chasing after each other and finding each other and learning about each other. And it's just so romantic, and I really liked it. I wasn't expecting it to be so romantic, Warren.
But it's so, and we all know how you feel. Oh, it's not a romantic comedy,
and I hate rom-coms, but I love the romance in this movie. It was so sweet. I was like, oh.
But I think that's the way that this movie moves Simon Templar to becoming the saint. It's by falling in love. It's that mates him now. He's not just a criminal. Now he becomes this human who believes in charity, who believes in helping others, and it's Elizabeth Shue and his love of her that creates the saint. So I thought that was and it worked pretty well. I thought it worked, it worked pretty well. And it also worked on the idea too that she could have given him away at any stage, but she doesn't. Like, she keeps the secret because it's like, the police know who Simon Templar is. The police know who the saint is, but they don't know it's the same person. She's the one who works out it's the same person, but she never gives him away. And all the way through the movie, she never gives him away. In the end, it's almost like we're going to have this secret love affair for eternity and no one will ever know.
Right. Oh, it's so tragic. So romantic, though.
Yeah.
There was a strange, prop in this movie. There is a scene where we're inside the Red Square office. So, a lot of this movie takes place in Russia. And we have this, corrupt, political leader who's, just just corrupt.
So anyways, normal Russia, basically, Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, and long story short, there's a scene where the Russian politician's son is also as crooked as they come, and he's been, injured, and he's in this office with the doctor getting mended. If you look in the background, and they don't even try to hide this, they almost even zoom in on this poster for a Ku Klux Klan rally in Alabama, Georgia, in the United States. And for any of our international listeners who's not quite sure what I'm saying, basically it's a hate group.
Yeah.
A hate group that advocates the killing of various different ethnicities that are not Caucasian. But it's bizarre, and it looks like it's an authentic poster. It was from October 13th, 1997, Ku Klux Klan rally, Alabama, Georgia. And I'm like, why is there a fucking Ku Klux Klan poster on an office in Russia? Obviously, no, they actually shot this movie in Russia. I don't know. That was just a strange prop. I don't know what the fuck was going on with that.
There has been a lot of people who have actually brought up all of this, actually, Velvet, especially not so much when the movie was out, not so much previously, but over the last few years, it has been actually, this movie has actually been seen as actually forecasting this weird connection between modern day Russia and modern day United States, of corruption of politics, of how the Russian mafia is trying to influence politics around the world and actually getting in and funding hate groups in Sweden, in America, trying to buy off politicians, in America or in Britain or in Germany or whatever. And this movie is really quite amazing in the fact that in 1997, it was actually saying, this is what's going to happen. Russia may not militarily be strong anymore, but politically, it's really going to try to influence the world. And what's stunning about that is that statement made in 1997 is actually happening today. And it's very, very, very interesting. I mean, I don't want to make it all political and get into Trump and Russia and all this sort of bullshit. It's not what our show's about. But the thing is that it's really interesting that this movie was forecasting what the Russians would attempt to do. And it pretty much has come true. It's
wow.
very, very interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting. So it's really interesting.
Scary shit.
Well, yeah, it's really interesting that you bring it up, Velvet. You know, it's very interesting that you bring it up. So yeah,
it was weird because it was like in the movie, it was like hinting that what is Russia cooperating with the Ku Klux Klan in the United States? Like, yeah, that was just disturbing. I was like, why is that is a weird prop. I mean, I know they got to put shit on the wall and, you know, they got to dress the set for the movie and stuff. And I'm like, really? That's the poster you put up for this mainstream movie?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Weird.
But it's interesting that it just predicted that so perfectly. It's kind of, you don't know whether that was actually this was their belief, that they thought this was what was starting to happen or what was going to happen, or whether it was just pure ass. Do you know what I mean? I don't actually know. But
I actually rewound that scene because I was like, oh, that's weird. I thought that poster said Ku Klux Klan. Wait, rewind that. And then I was like, wait, because, you know, I mean, they're in Russia, so I was like, well, maybe it's just some, you know, letters from the Cyrillic alphabet, and I just looked at it wrong, and your brain always looks for patterns and tries to make sense of shit, and since it's a foreign language I don't speak and I don't read, maybe, you know, I thought I saw a K and an L and a U and an X, and I'm like, so I rewound it, and I'm like, no, that's definitely a fucking poster advertising a rally for the Ku Klux Klan in Alabama, Georgia, in the United States. What the fuck? And I was like, when I saw that, I was like, oh, is this going to be a plot point in the movie? Is like something going to happen? No, it's a random poster on a wall in the movie, and it's prominently displayed. It's not like, oh, hey, if you pay attention, if you look really hard and squint your eye and look at the top left corner, you know, in this one frame. No, they pan by it and you can clearly see it. I was just like, what? Okay, that was weird.
See, it's interesting too, because when Russia moved out, the Soviet Union split up, and then we had this country, the Russian Federation. The interesting thing is it tried to make all these plays with democracy, as in true democracy. It never really worked, and now it sort of has this semi-democracy, if you like what I mean. Still democratic, but it's not really necessarily what an American would view as being democratic. But Russia has step by step since the 90s, like it's always been a nationalist nation. You know, if people know what nationalist politics are, right? It's always been that sort of nation. And the thing is that it kind of makes sense when you look at it, because, you know, it is one reason why things like, you know, homophobia and white supremacy and things like that, bigotry, are so prominent in Russia, because it is a nationalist nation. They believe in nationalist policies. And, you know, I think anyone who is, you know, probably in their 80s or 90s today will tell you, you don't want to really live in a nationalist nation, you know? But anyway, but we're getting down the political realm, and I really don't want to do that. So,
definitely not.
Yeah.
But I definitely had to point that poster out, because I was like, wow, that's bizarre. And so when you're watching a movie, if you think you saw a Ku Klux Klan poster, you did. Why? I don't know.
Yes.
So it's there. Oh, my goodness. Oh, so weird.
Yes.
So they originally wanted Mel Gibson to play the lead, to play the Saint in this movie. And he actually, but it sounds like he didn't like turn it down. It sounded like he only turned it down because he just had, you know, pretty much finished making Braveheart. Well, I mean, in 1995, but this is a couple years later, but he still felt like he'd just been away from home so much working on movies that now was not the time for him to take on another project. But Mel Gibson as the Saint, I just don't see it.
No, neither do I. I'm glad it didn't. I'm really glad that didn't happen. There could have been a number of British actors at the time I could have actually have seen playing Simon Templar. None of whom, Ralph Fiennes, there were, I think Ralph Fiennes would actually make he's a bit old now, but back then would have been brilliant at playing Simon Templar, I think. He would have been my first choice, personally.
Interesting. And I like that actor. Yeah, he's a fine actor. He has amazing stage presence in any movie I see him in. Like, he just has that je ne sais quoi that just, like, anything he plays in any movie, you're just drawn in. Like, he makes a good leading man when they give him the opportunity to play a leading character in a film. I wouldn't have thought of him as a saint, but now that you say it, yeah, he would have been good in this.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think he would have actually been perfect. In many ways, I don't, but then I see him more as a traditional saint rather than a prequel saint, if you get where I'm saying. So, because this version of the saint is a prequel, in that sense, I think Val Kilmer is actually better. You know, if you were going to make a traditional Saint movie in 1997, then I think Ralph Fiennes would have been my first pick. But because they were doing this prequel type story, I actually think Val Kilmer was 100% on the money. I think he was actually perfect.
Yeah, I think he was so good in this.
I think he was actually really well cast, actually.
Yeah. Another fun thing about this movie, movies from 1997, I still did not have internet in my home personally. Had access to the internet, but we weren't at the point where a lot of us had internet at home. So it's fun to see this movie basically using a type of internet for the saint to communicate with all these different buyers around the world, like, hey, I'm going to steal this. Who's the highest bidder? So just the way they always portray internet and technology. They weren't even calling it the internet yet in this movie. It's just some kind of computer communication system. And just like everything's in DOS. The screen is black with green text. I mean, that's really it. And he had a phone at the time that looked pretty, high tech. It's a Nokia cell phone, actual cell phone, and it had an actual attached keyboard, which was huge at the time. So it's a flip phone with an attached keyboard. So, I mean, this movie for its time was high tech. It's funny looking at it now because now, of course, this stuff looks incredibly dated.
That Nokia phone that Simon Templar uses in the movie, yes, as you say, it's a flip phone, but it's not a flip phone like, if anyone can remember old-fashioned flip phones that flip vertically, this thing flips horizontally, and then it becomes like a little computer, a laptop computer, if you like. That, as you said, that was a real Nokia product that they actually used.
And I actually remember seeing a couple of people have that, but in Europe. And it was
I remember, Velvet. That phone, everybody wanted that phone.
Everybody wanted it. Nobody could afford it at the time.
Everybody wanted that phone. Even though all people were actually doing was using it to send text messages.
Oh my God. And text messages back then were like one sentence? You couldn't even write a paragraph back then. You could only text somebody a sentence back then.
But everybody wanted it. But yeah, the phone actually could be, did have the ability to send emails and that sort of thing, which was still pretty high tech for a phone in 1997, to be able to do that sort of thing. So it was a pretty slick bit of equipment for the time. Yeah. It's also interesting too, because as we said, the director of this movie, Philip Noyce, is Australian. And in this movie, of course, as you pointed out, Velvet, he plays lots of different nationalities and, all this sort of stuff, and that is actually quite accurate to the Saint. He does actually pretend to be other people, dress up and do all this sort of stuff. So that is actually quite good. It's something that we never got to see in all the TV series. So that was actually quite nice. That's quite accurate to the books. But awesome. But what was really interesting is the very first time we see him actually properly talk, it's with an Australian accent. He's playing an Australian. And that was apparently just a pure nod by Philip Noyce. It's like he wanted the very first character in the movie to be an Australian. So
very cool.
That was just a personal thing with the director.
Did a South African accent, which was interesting because I have to admit that's an accent I don't hear often. I couldn't place it. I had to look it up online. Like, what accent is he doing in that scene when he's playing the long-haired artist / poet?
Yes.
He's speaking with a he's, vernacular Afrikaans pronunciation. So it's just like, that's very sexy, very alluring, very mysterious. But I can't believe I missed this movie, actually, because if I had seen this movie in 1997, I would have been 17. I would have been so in love with Val Kilmer, because he was just so hot in this movie and so romantic and just a perfect action star. Just, wow. This was such a cool movie. And, and a man that actually wants love. That's sexy, because he's even telling Elizabeth Shue towards the end of the movie to tell me you love me. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Very cute movie.
Yeah. There is something in this movie for everybody. It's also not very violent. Any deaths that might happen actually happen off screen. They're not really happening on screen. Mm-hmm. There's even one scene where he picks up, because as we all know, well, we don't all know, but I'll just let people know, Simon Templar never carries a gun. He does carry a knife, but he never carries a gun. He doesn't like guns. He's just not fond of them. And in this, he actually does pick up a gun, and he's facing down a Russian soldier with the machine gun, and he just goes, oh, to hell, you haven't done anything wrong. And he shoots it in the air to make something fall on the soldier, right? So even in this, like, Simon Templar is not running around killing people, So that was, that was interesting, So it's kind of family friendly in that sense, this movie. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, surprisingly, surprisingly for how much action and shooting there is. Yeah, you really don't. There's no blood. You don't really see any violent deaths. It's just implied. It's off screen. There's a funny scene with, I guess not just a scene, a character quirk. Elizabeth Shue, our female doctor, she has the knowledge and the information and the formula for cold fusion. And what does she do? She writes it on little bits of paper. Where does she keep the little bits of paper? In her bra.
Yes.
In her bra, of course, the safest place until she falls in love with somebody and gets naked. And then that's when the saint is able to steal that formula.
Yes.
So that's also why he's got to seduce her and get her naked, so he can get those bits of paper out of her bra.
Yes. Yes. But of course, he will, as we said, fall in love.
Yes.
Yeah, with the good doctor. Is there much else we need to really say? We haven't really talked about this movie in depth. I suppose one...
You kind of have to see it. Have to see it. It's kind of one of those, it's hard to really, especially because there's so much action, and also with a portrayal where we have one actor portraying many different characters, you have to see that. It's hard to explain to do it justice. I just wanted to mention one more thing. This would have been a totally different movie if they went with this draft of the script, where originally Elizabeth Shue was supposed to die towards the very beginning of the movie. And it was supposed to become like a revenge-like thriller type film. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, so... Yeah, I'm glad they didn't go with that.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't do that. It would have been interesting to see how that would have worked. Yeah, but I'm glad that I'm glad the way they went, the way they did. Even though, as I have said, there are elements to this movie that then don't make sense when you watch everything else, which is Saint, because it kind of contradicts things. But I'm still glad they went in the way that they did. Yeah, most definitely. All right, so if we are going to rate the 1997, we have to be very careful how we say this, because there are so many movies called The Saint. So this is 1997 version of The Saint. How are we going to rate it, Velvet?
Okay, out of a possible 5 Eric Roberts, I'm going to go ahead and give this a 4. 4 Erics from me.
I'm going to give it exactly the same. 4, actually. 4 out of 5. But, because, of course, we have the Warren-isms of the world. In regards to how it falls into Saint lore, I have to give it a 1. Okay? Wow. Because it played with an existing story so much. So much so that even if you watch it as a prequel... you're just going to sort of say, yeah, but that doesn't make sense with what happens later and what happens later and what happens later, right?
That's a frustrating feeling. Yeah.
So that's a problem. It's not like when they did, when they remade The Thing and it was a prequel, how one movie leads directly into the next movie, so, or Road One leads directly into A New Hope, this movie just doesn't do that, and it raises more questions, and it creates timelines that don't mesh properly, and ideologies that don't mesh properly. So in that sense, it's an appalling film, and that's one reason why a lot of as we said before, Saint fans hate it. But as a standalone action adventure fun film, I'd give it a 4. Yeah, it's good.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good.
Nice. Yeah, definitely worth a watch. And it's also on, actually, all the films that we're reviewing tonight are available on Amazon Prime. Not a plug, just throwing it out there for anybody that has an Amazon Prime subscription, because I was like, we can watch The Ape, The Saint, and also the next movie that we're getting ready to review is also available on Amazon Prime.
Oh,
so just giving people a heads up out there. So I love my Netflix, but sometimes what you want isn't on Netflix. If you got Amazon Prime, don't forget to check out their library too, because they got a lot of great freebies in your membership there. So, and again, not sponsored, just letting people know.
No, I mean, sometimes you need more than one service, because one service doesn't cover everything. You need quite often to be running 2 services is the way I see it. And the other thing too is that, but running 2 online services these days, it's still an awful lot cheaper than old cable bills used to be. So,
isn't that the truth?
Right?
My God, right.
And so that's the thing. You can run numerous internet streaming services, and it's still miles cheaper than what you were paying for cable. So it's so much better value for money, in that sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we will be back with after a quick break with another movie. And this is actually a really famous movie, even though it's a B-grader. So stay tuned for our final review. And we are back, and that was, of course, Matt Bianco with Yeah Yeah. Now,
great. That's a great title.
Now, our next movie is from the United States, and it is from 1953. And it is, although a B-grade, this is a very classic film, very well-known film. So well known that, in fact, it was remade. In fact, I think it was in 1983 or something like that, but we'll get to all of that.
Oh, wow.
And the movie that we are talking about is Invaders from Mars. Now, classic title, if there ever was one. Pretty straight to the point. You pretty much know what's going to happen, So, apart from the fact that obviously this involves invaders from Mars, what is our story about? Well, it is basically it's all seen through the eyes, if you like, of a young boy, which is meant to be what's his name, Jimmy. Yeah, okay. Well, such an obvious fucking name, but anyway. And anyway, so he lives with his mother and father in this town where there is lots and lots of scientists live in this town because there's lots of scientific stuff going on. There's a scientific observatory. They also are building parts for rockets, and his father is one of the scientists, okay, who works on the rockets. Now, his family life is that perfect or that ideal image of 1950s America. A loving, doting father who looks after his son, a mother who loves everybody and looks after the house. It's that, it's the perfect family, supposedly, right? Until one night, Jimmy is awoken by strange lights in the sky. And what he sees is what looks like a flying saucer land sort of out beyond where their house is. So he tells his parents, and his father, being a keen scientist, thinks, maybe I should actually go and investigate this. So he leaves in the middle of the night.
Don't do it.
Okay, to go and investigate. He then will return in the morning as a very different person, a very mean, angry, very nasty, evil person. And suddenly other people around the town seem to change as well. They change from being very, very nice people into very evil sort of people doing things that they wouldn't normally do, like setting houses on fire, and then, in the end, basically committing, high treason, against the United States. So what is going on? Well, our main star, Jimmy, basically does believe that there is something... Sorry?
I got it. Sorry, I just got to give you a heads up really quick. Let's see. The actor is Jimmy Hunt. The character in the movie is David.
Sorry.
It's okay. So the little boy's name is David. Just in case people are like, where's Jimmy?
My bad.
The little boy's name is David in the movie.
So
sorry.
It's David,
okay, go ahead.
not Jimmy. Okay, sorry. My bad. So David...
You were close. That was the real actor.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So anyway, so basically, David thinks that there's something wrong, and he suddenly realizes on the back of these people's head there is this weird surgical sort of scar and protrusion coming from the back of their neck. So he believes that these people have been basically, taken over somehow or other by some strange force. So he goes off to see the police. It turns out that the police have all been taken over as well and whatnot. And he finally meets up with a doctor. And this young woman, she basically believes him. She believes that there is something strange going on. And she takes him under her wing, takes him away from the parents under the disguise that she thinks he might have polio. I think is meant to be Was it meant to be polio or something? I think. I can't remember.
So. Yeah.
All right. Takes them away. And they go off to meet an astronomer who believes that there really are people living on Mars, and it's it's quite acceptable that these people have landed in this town to destroy the rocket program that humans are trying to build, and the Martians are trying to destroy it. So the three of them are trying to find out what's going on. In the end, they contact the military. In the end, the military do believe them that this really is real. And then together, our scientist, our doctor, and young David will team up with the US Army to try to find out who these beings are that seem to have buried themselves and a spaceship in the ground, who are controlling people trying to do their evil work of blowing up everything which is basically rocket related in this town. So the question is, will they be successful? Will they stop the Martians, or will they not? Will the people who have been controlled by the Martians, will they live or will they die? Well, you'll have to watch the end of the movie to find out. But that is our movie, Invaders from Mars. We will obviously go into more detail, but that is a quick rundown. What did you think of it, Velvet?
Wow. Of all the movies we're reviewing tonight, this one I liked the least. I didn't dislike it, but I liked it the least of our choices tonight. Found it honestly a little slow towards the middle there, even when it became action packed. I think I was just kind of over this movie. But starting from the beginning, as you mentioned, it's the stereotypical time capsule of the 1950s family unit: the working husband, the homemaker wife, and the one child. Okay, this kid's really into astronomy, and he's waiting for this comet to come around, and he's looking at this comet. Hey, Dad, come look at the comet. And the mother has to come along and be a fucking shrew. It's like, go to bed, y'all. And I'm like, dang, this comet only comes around once every couple of years.
Yeah, I know.
Watch the comet for 2 seconds. Dang, don't spoil it. The kid's going to be resentful for life. I'm resentful just watching the movie. But very strange when every time so the kid sees this fucking green craft land and in the distance. And as you mentioned, people go to check out this area, and the sand opens up and people get swallowed by the sand. That is like the creepiest, no, actually it wasn't creepy. It was just weird because it was creepy because it was like angelic choir music.
Yeah.
Like,
I know.
Like almost like, hallelujah, like almost like that. And at first I was like, okay, that's supposed to be menacing, right? But it's just weird because it sounds like it's supposed to be good and holy and heavenly, but people are getting sucked into the earth and then they're getting like lobotomized through the back of their neck and turned into, and it's like, okay, now were aliens taking over their bodies, like inhabiting their bodies, or no, they just turned them into like slaves, right?
Mind control, basically.
Mind control, yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
I seem to have trouble with this concept of mind control in movies. I just don't get it for some reason. I'm always like, what happened?
It's very,
controlling their minds?
It's very common in 50s, 60s, and 70s sci-fi. It's very common. Mind control was a very, was seen to be used a lot.
Like when the fucking robot versus the Aztec mummy. How's that?
Oh, God, yeah.
When they had mind control in that movie, and I'm like, wait, what happened? Why is he, what? How'd he hypnotize her from afar? That's how I understood it. I was like, he hypnotized her from afar. And you're like, no, it's mind control, Velvet. And I'm like, I just don't get this concept. It's just not a common concept nowadays. So anytime I see mind control in these movies from the 50s, I'm just like, what is going on? Okay, so we have people getting mind controlled, but I have to admit, there's a slightly offensive scene in this movie. We have a human doing green face. Now, if Martians ever come to Earth and they see all these movies of humans doing green face, They must be just so offended by our lack of cultural sensitivity towards their physical appearance. But all joking aside, I did have a laugh attack. I actually did have a laugh attack because I honestly, for half a second, was like, maybe I should be offended, because the whole movie is, first off, typical for this type of movie from America from this era. It's 1950s. It's a sci-fi movie. Everybody is going to be pretty much Caucasian. We finally have a person of ethnic diversity in the film, and they are a fucking head that's been painted green. And because here's when I lost it. Okay, here's a great description of it online. We got a large silent head with shifting eyes and 2 tentacles on either side, and each of the tentacles branches off into 3 smaller tentacles. So it's a fucking head with tentacles.
Yes.
And somebody's like, oh my God, what is that? And this like other Martian that looks humanoid says, that is the most advanced evolution of your kind. And I'm like,
I know.
A fucking head with tentacles is how the most advanced we're ever going to be. It doesn't talk. It just sits there and looks at everybody. It's in a fucking bubble. It looks like it's African American. It's been painted green. I lost it. I was laughing. Every time they showed that thing, I couldn't help it. I just lost it. It just made me laugh. Now, for other people, this is obviously a very iconic character. Somehow I missed out on this character, did not know about it. But it turns out that head in the bubble with the tentacles was actually Luce Potter. Now, that name may not ring a bell, but you'll know the character she played. She was a Munchkin, one of the Munchkins from The Wizard of Oz, 1939. Right. Yeah, she played the Martian head, and for years she even received fan letters from people telling them how much she scared them as kids, being this head with tentacles.
Good God. Wow. Wow.
But yeah, I found this movie a bit dry, even though it had a lot going on, even though it had interesting concepts, because basically this head with tentacles is controlling other Martians, like humanoid type Martians, like basically controlling them as slaves. They even say, we are her slaves.
Mutants,
yeah,
they're referred
right.
to.
My favorite
Mutants.
word from the 50s. My favorite word from the 50s, the mutants.
Yes.
At one part, a woman even screams. She goes, a mutant!
Yes.
And I, again, had a laugh attack because I was just like, I can't with this movie. It just did not age well for me personally. After you see movies like This Island Earth and Forbidden Planet, these 1950s sci-fi movies have a very high bar to attain. And this movie, at first glance, looks like it's on par with those films, but I feel like it just falls below. The pacing is slow, the concepts are weak, the motivations of the aliens are not very clearly defined, although they do theorize, they're here to shut down mankind's, atomic, or rocket, basically they want to slow down our technology. They don't want us to catch up and kill everybody, kill the universe, but I just feel like somehow... Honestly, I think it's the ending. We'll get there, but honestly, the ending of this movie is what did me in. Once it got to the ending of this movie, I was like, okay, I officially lost a lot of respect for this movie.
Yes, the ending. Or we'll get to that in a minute, but that is it. But but it is. Yeah. It is. I mean, the plot, to keep this thing moving quickly, there are assumptions or things said which are just like, hang on. Can we take a step back here for a second?
Yes.
When they meet, when the doctor and David meet up with the scientists, and the scientist basically says, yes, there's life on Mars, and it looks different to us. It doesn't look like a person, and that's why they have created these sub-creatures called mutants to do their physical work. And it's a little bit like, how the fuck do you know that? You're an astronomer.
He said they live under the ground. I'm like, wait, how do you know this?
I know. It's like he suddenly has all the answers to what's going on, because he's an astronomer. That was just sort of mind blowing. Then, of course, we get quite a lot of military stock footage, quite a lot of military stock footage.
Much.
Sort of thrown in.
That scene was too much, actually. That was annoying to me. Yeah, it shows like a ton of stock footage of like rockets getting set up and bombs and explosions and gunfire, and people are just running and running, and this child's running, and then they're superimposing the bombs and the rockets and the explosions and the smoke and the gunfire over the child running and running and running, and that shit goes for like fucking 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I get it. But they were really proud of their effect. I mean, for 1953, I'm sure if I'd been watching that, I just would have been like glued to my seat, like, eyes open wide, mouth hanging open, just like, whoa! But we're so spoiled by technology and entertainment now. We've seen it. You can show it for 10 seconds. We got it. Move on. It's not adding to the story.
And remember too, this movie did not have the budget, or was not seen in the same light as Forbidden Planet,
this island Earth,
or this island Earth.
Planet.
Yeah, this is a B grader. We have to say that, but it was a B grader that people definitely took to their hearts. It's always mentioned. And in fact, the story obviously grabbed people enough that it was, as we said, it was actually remade. They actually remade this movie in the 80s. Which was very, very interesting. The other thing too is that the concept behind it is not a bad one. The idea that there is life on Mars, they're worried about militarism on Earth, so they send a preemptive strike to slow down humans' capability to move sort of war into space. That's not really necessarily a bad concept behind a film. It's quite interesting, because even if we think about other movies like The Day the Earth Stood Still, the concept is very similar. Aliens come to Earth because they're worried about Earth's militarism moving into space. So, the stories are similar in that way. It's just the execution of them is very, very different. Yeah. This movie does, in controlling all the humans to try to do their bidding, trying to get them to murder scientists, trying to get them to blow up rocket bases, trying to do all this stuff. The problem is they just didn't obviously have the money, and it's very cheaply done, Also, the acting of a lot of the extras is pretty appalling. It's not really very good. Also, the acceptance of the fact that this child is taken away from the parents by this doctor, it is way too simplistic, in my mind, for the way it all works. But then again, you've got to pack all of this into this quite short film. So, I can get that. One thing I did like, though, about the cinematography is that when our young child is in the police station, and it is all shot from an because you know how, like, when you're a very young child, everything looked much bigger than it really is. Because simply your height, you're much shorter, right? So when he's in the police station, there is almost this feeling that the humans around him are giants. Did you notice that? Yeah. Actually. And that was, I thought, really clever cinematography in the sense that we were seeing the police station, in other words, the idea of authority, from a very childlike perspective, through the eyes of a child. That was very interestingly done.
Good. Yeah, that was good cinematography, actually. That was a good cinematic technique. I did definitely like that.
But it's one of the only ones in the movie, should I point out.
That scene in the beginning also when, so his father goes to inspect, the son is like, oh my God, something landed. I think it was like a spaceship. And his dad's like, well, let me go check it out. And, daddy falls down the sand pit and then they give him a lobotomy. They do mind control and whatever they do. They change his personality and he comes back and he's a mean asshole. That's a little upsetting that he backhands his son in this movie. We don't see stuff like that often in modern cinema. Kind of bothers me a little. What bothered me more was, okay, the son just asked the dad something, and, the dad backhands him, and, the kid, goes flying and falls down. And then the mother comes in the room, and it's clear that the father has hit the son, and the mother's just like, oh, Timmy, you better go outside and play. Your dad's had a hard day. Fuck you, you 1950s fucking housewife.
Yeah,
I ought to call child services on your ass right now. Yeah, I really didn't like that scene. It actually really bothered me. I hate this, parents need to, obviously, I don't know. Anyways, I don't need to say anything else about it. I'm sure most people can see where I'm going with this. Just, keep your eye open for that scene. If you're sensitive to that kind of thing, maybe don't watch this movie, because it's that 1950s movie culture that we just don't really understand today. And it can be triggering.
Yes, yeah. No, that is very true. I mean, there was nothing good to say about that. I mean, it's appalling behaviour, but it was kind of, I suppose, in some ways seen as acceptable then, I suppose.
Right.
Where, no modern parent goes around hitting children, anymore. Mm-hmm. But, I suppose back in the 50s, people did, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
It's like, he was practically like, hi, Dad, how you doing? Whack, leave
Whack, I know,
Mom.
yeah.
Daddy? Okay, oh, David, go outside and play. Your dad's had a bad day. I was like, wow, did I really just fucking watch this? And then we have fucking people doing green face, being offensive to Martians, and I'm just, oh, no, I can't take it. But I am joking about that, obviously. But, that was triggering, I have to admit. That also just made me like, oh, man, I don't know about this movie. The scene where I lost my train of thought. I'll let you pick up. I lost my train of thought. I'll get back to it. It'll come back to me.
I was going to talk about the music. I really liked the use of music in this film. I thought it really worked well. That sort of music they use when people are about to be stolen, sort of sucked down into the earth. It worked very well. I thought for a cheaper movie from the 50s, I don't know, I liked it. I thought it worked well, actually.
I thought it was so weird, because it was like, oh, like, it sounded like an angel choir.
Yeah, I know.
Into the earth, and I'm like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. That was weird. But but no, the score of this movie is really dramatic, which does match a lot of the action towards the end there. So, I mean, it is a good score. It's really dramatic. It matches the pace of the film. It adds to the intensity, even though I do think that angel choir on the sand hole suck scene is just out of place.
The angel suck scene. That's okay. Are we talking about the same movie here, Velvet?
I may have said that wrong.
Oh, dearie me.
Honestly, I guess I'm just trying to keep myself from talking about the ending. Not that I want to hide the ending. The movie's from 1953, but this is when I say I really lost respect for this movie. But at the same time, it was like, or did it mean something else? People. Little Timmy, whenever he's running from all the explosions and the music's really dramatic, or did I say Timmy? I don't know why I said that. Sorry, David. See, now I'm doing it.
Timmy's falling down the well. Hey, Lassie, where's Timmy? Where's Timmy? Woof, woof, woof. Woof, woof,
and then we see, we look at the back of Lassie's head, and there's a cut, and she's under mind control from the Martians.
Well, I swear it probably is, because you think about a Lassie film, right? It starts off, where's Timmy? Lassie, where's Timmy? Woof, woof, woof. What, Lassie? He went down McCain Street, woof, 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 and then turned left into Elba Avenue, woof, 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 and he fell down the well, woof, woof, woof.
Oh,
no. I mean, how the fuck did people ever get to find out what happened to Timmy from a dog going woof, woof, woof?
You just made me want to marathon Lassie.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. yeah, so David, there we go. I was going to say Timmy again. David was, it's toward the ends of the film. It's all going down. It's humans versus Martians. There's fucking rockets and gunfire and smoke and explosions and rockets and the boys running and running and running and the music's really dramatic and all this like destruction and alien human warfare is being superimposed over little David running his ass off, and then he wakes up in bed.
It was all a dream.
Or was it? Fucking God. Or was it? Or was it? So he runs his parents' bedroom. Oh, we forgot to talk about that. In the movie, his parents, like, they figure out, his parents are under mind control, and they had some back neck lobotomy thingamajig done by Martians. Oh, but we can fix it? What? Okay.
Yeah, I know.
For some reason, they're doing surgery on his parents to reverse the Martian back of neck lobotomy procedure. Who knew humans knew how to do that? And he's so little David. I keep wanting to call him Timmy. What the
Timmy?
fuck?
Let's just call him Timmy. Timmy and Lassie. There wasn't a scientist. There wasn't a doctor. There was just Timmy and Lassie. Timmy and Lassie versus the Martians.
Oh my fucking God! I can't wait to see that movie. So David,
what's that, Lassie? Woof woof woof. Martians have landed back to the house. Woof woof woof.
Angels choir. Whole second. What's going on? So David runs into his parents' bedroom after he wakes up from his nightmare, and they're like, "Oh, we're okay." And then David goes back to his bedroom and he looks out the window and he sees a green spaceship land in the distance. And it's like, wait, so it was a prophetic dream? Wait, so now the movie has gone from it was all a dream to it was all a prophetic dream.
Yeah, well, it's a bit
what?
like it's a bit like when they kill the dinosaur and then the last scene is a pile of dinosaur eggs. You know,
oh
so
yeah.
I said doo 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 doo.
It just made me think of Godzilla 2000.
Yeah, I know. They played that trick, didn't they?
Except for they actually killed all the eggs, didn't they? I think they smashed them all, didn't they?
Yeah.
That
was a horrendous piece of.
But it was so fun to see Godzilla kick Zilla's ass and Godzilla find.
I know that was
that
good.
Fight
wasn't it?
lasts 2 seconds.
I know it's just over.
So fun.
It's like it was literally the Japanese saying "fuck you."
It's like bye Zilla, then it's like bye Zilla.
Yeah, I know that was so good. Yeah, that was absolutely so good. But
that's the only thing that would have saved this movie for me is if Godzilla just all of a sudden showed up and breathed radioactive fire over everybody. That just would have been amazing. Just like, yeah. But like Godzilla's like, I was just born in 1950, but I know a piece of shit when I see one. No, this movie's really not that bad.
No.
This movie's really not that bad. But that ending, that fucking, it was all a dream.
Well, it's the Wizard of Oz, isn't it? It's the Wizard of Oz.
Oh. You were there, and you had a lobotomy.
Yeah, I know. You had a lobotomy.
And you were under the control Martians. Oh my God! And you backhanded me, and Mommy just ignored it. I'm like, oh my God, fuck this movie. I don't know. The more I talk about it, the less I like this movie.
I didn't mind it. I actually found it quite engaging. I didn't get bored.
Mm-hmm.
Although in saying that, I had actually seen it before. This was not the first time I'd ever seen this film. So
okay, I'd never seen this before. I've actually not heard of this. Like, Invaders from Mars sounds like a very generic 1950s sci-fi title, so I felt like I had seen this before. Again, it's almost that pop culture by osmosis effect that a lot of sci-fi films from the 50s seem to have on pop culture, on the psyche of people. We all feel like we've seen these movies, and then we actually sit down and watch it, and we're like, no, I actually have not. That's odd. Yeah, and why do I feel like I know so much about this movie? I think pop culture by osmosis.
It's just, you're exactly right, Phil. You're exactly right. I mean, people will often talk about movies that they've never actually seen. They seem to know so much about them, but they've never actually seen the movie. So you're 100% right. You're 100% correct.
Yeah, this movie falls in that category for me because I'm like, I feel like I've seen this, but then I actually watched it, I'm like, no, I definitely have not seen this movie because this movie's triggering me. I would remember a movie that triggers me like this one does with the whole child violence and the dream shit, and I'm just like, and the fucking head in a ball with tentacles, and I don't know. I just was not feeling this movie.
I can understand that. I mean, look, I quite liked it. I think I do think though the story is very simplistic. I do think that there is way too much use of what is clearly stock footage.
They didn't actually launch rockets and make shit.
No, not in this movie. No, it's all a bit too quick. It's just what's meant to be going on. This movie just portraying it far too quickly. I mean, the idea that it's also the whole idea that there is a whole infrastructure with humanities and governments and all the rest of it. You can't just have an astronomer ring up his friend who happens to be a general, and then suddenly the entire US government says, yeah, we're going to believe David, he's seen a Martian. I mean, it's just, it's too simplistic, in that sense. But then again, it's a B-grade movie from the 50s. What are we really asking? I mean...
Right.
But that's always the problem. The stories are so simple. The solutions are so simple. I mean, even when they're trapped underground, they blow a big hole in the ground, they go underground to try to get into the spaceship. They get into the spaceship, and then they're racing away, and they get sealed in, because the Martians or the mutants are using these heat weapons to melt through the rock, okay? So they have to get out. They can't get out. They're trapped, underground. And so they find one of these heat guns. So who is the person that they give the heat gun to dig them out? It's not one of the soldiers. No, they give it to little David. And the general quite literally hands this super weapon to this child and then says, here you go, David. Do you know how to use this? How the fuck would he know how to use this?
Amazing.
Oh my
Amazing.
God. Yeah.
There is there's that scene where they keep just zooming in on this, it's red. The entire screen's just this blurry red. And I'm just like, what the fuck am I looking at? And then it's supposed to be the walls of the underground tunnels. And I found a little interesting piece of trivia. So the special effects department used condoms to create the bubbles on the walls of the underground tunnels.
Wow.
Yeah, I was surprised too. I was like, wow, they were using condoms in 1953 for special effects in sci-fi horror movies? That was low budget.
Well, I suppose you think about it, right? But you think about it, if you've got to make bubbles, right? I mean, it's a pretty quick solution, isn't it? I mean... Yeah,
I was surprised too. Really?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, for the time it was made, it actually makes total sense. Now we think about it, we just go, it's funny. Why don't you just pump out some plastic? But they couldn't. They probably couldn't do that then. You know what I mean?
No, I guess not. Vacuum forming plastic probably wasn't something easily or readily available. Yeah, so might not have been. Yeah,
so that's actually really, really interesting. That's fascinating. That's absolutely fascinating. Well, actually, I'll tell you a story. Actually, an interesting story about that is that in Australia in the early 1980s, late 1970s, there was you know how Commonwealth countries play cricket, not baseball, okay? Right. Mm-hmm. Now, traditionally, cricket is always played, as a test match. It lasts 6-7 days or whatever. It takes for fucking ever. You don't take the whole week off from work just to watch the bloody thing, right? So there was this road cricket league was founded in Australia called World Series Cricket, and it actually birthed all the modern cricket of the 2020s and the one-day matches and everything that everybody is so used to now in modern-day cricket. But it was all born, actually, in Melbourne, Australia. That's where it all started in the late 70s. And they started televising night cricket. Now, this had never been done before, right? And they also started miking up the players, putting microphones on them and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And the problem was they couldn't work out what to do because the microphones in the ground keep getting wet because the grass is wet. So the way they protected them is they used to wrap the microphones in condoms. It was a very long-winded story, but there you go. Yeah.
Nice.
That's what they did because they wanted to put a microphone behind the wickets, right? So they could actually hear the stumps being knocked off when the ball hit it. And so the way they did it was they put a microphone in the ground covered in a condom. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Oh, I just found something else interesting. So I'll say I hate the ending of this movie. I hate that the nightmare becomes a reality, ending. I hate that ending. It turns out that that's actually an alternate ending. The original ending is just the ending where there's warfare and
oh wow,
yeah,
okay.
The European version is just, it ends with this warfare. The American version, they were just like, nah, this ending is just too down. You guys gotta fucking punch it up, make it nicer, make it more upbeat. So that's why we have that whole dream sequence with, and then the dream becomes a reality. So I was like, that's interesting.
Okay, so that's fascinating. Well researched, Velvet, because well done.
That answers a lot of things. I thought that was a weird ass ending, but then I'm like, for an American audience, because we just can't handle downer endings. But there was a time where it was okay to end the movie as a dream, but now we've hit that time in cinema where you just cannot. No. In this date and time, you cannot do, it was all a dream. But back then, that was still the time where that was still refreshing and upbeat. And even all the way up in the 80s, probably early 90s, you could still pull it off. And it was divisive. Some people liked it and some people hate it. But now I think all across the board, you just cannot do, it was all a dream. Like, you just can't do that anymore.
It was also a very quick, cheap, easy way to finish a movie.
Lazy writing.
Lazy writing.
Lazy.
So instead, we don't need a follow-up. We don't need to explain exactly what happened. Did they survive? Didn't they survive? Suddenly, you can reach a high point and then wake up. Oh, it was all a dream. Wow, that's a quick, easy way to finish the film, Yeah. As you said, Velvet, very lazy. Very lazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And in saying that, we'll probably finish off this podcast by saying, it was all a dream.
You didn't really hear this podcast.
You didn't really hear this podcast. It was all a dream. Yeah.
It's like you arrive at work as the podcast ends. It was all a dream.
Yes,
now you're at work. You were sleep driving.
Yes.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. That is the worst, though, when you do drift for a second when you're driving. I haven't done it in a long, long, long time. But every once in a while.
Please don't do it. It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, please don't. Or when you daydream to the point, like, it's just, all of a sudden you arrive at work and you're like, damn, I don't even remember, like, really driving. It's just like muscle memory, just like automatic pilot. And you're just like daydreaming, not even really paying attention, and you just drive.
Yes,
and arrive at your destination.
Do not recommend this to anyone. Driving is a very serious thing.
No,
so many people die on the roads every year.
We do not condone dreaming or sleeping while you're driving.
No.
Please be awake and alert. If you're tired, pull over.
Exactly right.
Pull over and park. Rest your eyes.
And it should actually and it should also be pointed out. It's holiday season. There's a lot of people on the roads.
Yes.
Take sleep breaks. Do not drink. Wear your safety belt. Do all these things because the death toll over the holiday season gets out of control. So
sad.
Sad. Yeah, driving's a serious thing. Take it seriously. Don't do the day drive to dream drive. Don't. Whatever.
Yeah, don't do it.
Don't do it.
I agree. Don't do it. Be alert. That's also why, I have to listen to either music or podcasts when I'm driving. I can't just sit in silence or I daydream too much. And then it's just like, all of a sudden I'm like, I'm here. Was it all a dream?
But I will tell you what, Phil, I have had drives like that where I've suddenly got to my destination and I can't really remember getting there.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It just becomes autopilot. Just muscle memory.
I know, yeah, terrible.
It's crazy.
Not something to be proud of, but I have done it.
No,
I know.
We call that mindlessness. We have to be mindful.
Yes, we weren't lobotomized and under the control of the Martians. That's what we should probably say. Yeah, no.
Oh my goodness.
So, have we got much else to say about this film?
I actually don't. From a special effects point of view, the humans, they're supposed to represent like massively tall mutants. They're supposed to be like, 7 feet, 8 feet tall. They kind of lumber around. They're kind of just big goons. Fucking head in the bubble. I don't know why. That for some reason just bugs me. Right. I just couldn't take it serious. I don't know. Usually of all the shitty movies we watch, we've watched so many that are way worse than this with bad special effects, and I'm like, oh god, that was so cheap, that was awful. But I'm not like, I don't know. This one though, I don't like it.
Yes,
it bugs me. Oh my god, yeah, okay. I just don't really have anything nice to say about this movie.
All right,
it's really not that bad compared to other movies, but I don't know. This is just one of those ones where I think the way I feel about this one is what happened to The Ape. Whoever was compiling this list for the 50 worst movies ever made and put The Ape on there, the way I feel about Invaders from Mars is how they felt about The Ape. They just could not logically look at it for what it was, and they put it on the list. They just couldn't stand the movie, put it on the list. Yeah. That's how I'm feeling about Invaders from Mars. I know I've seen way worse. I know it's really not that bad, but for some reason I just can't stand this movie.
But that's fine. You don't have to bond with every film you ever see.
That's true.
I mean,
that's true. That's true.
There are a lot of movies which are critically acclaimed that I can't stand. I still think The English Patient is one of the most boring films I've seen. I love Ralph Fiennes, as I said before. I've heard a lot of people say that, actually. I've heard a lot of people actually say that movie is boring. I've never seen it. I've never watched it. And there's so many things about it that I just don't think are great, and everybody raves about it. There's lots of, so anyway.
All right, I'm ready to rate it.
All right. Go for it, Velvet. Go for it, Velvet. Wow. Where are you going to put this one?
I'm going to be harsh with this, and I'll admit this is an emotional decision. This is not a logical decision, but this is also a podcast between friends, and we're flattered if you take the time to listen to us and then join in on the conversation, at least mentally. So my point is, I'm not a professional, and every once in a while I'm just going to be ruled by my emotions and not my logic. That's going to be the case with this rating. I just did not like this movie. I don't know what it is about. Just did not like it. So out of a possible 5 Eric Roberts, I'm going to give this a 2.5, because I've definitely seen worse, but this movie's like...
Well, that's all right.
I don't know. It's like eliciting like these really negative emotions.
Yeah.
And just like, I just disliked it so much. All right. Well, that's my final say.
Well, honestly, I'm only going to give it a 3 because, look, I didn't dislike it, but I didn't necessarily like it. I wasn't bored, but I wasn't at the same time enthralled. To me, it was just like, it was a background filler movie, it just, it didn't do, and why it was remade, somebody saw enough in this story. But as I said earlier, I get the idea that idea of a alien preemptive strike is an interesting one. I just think the way it's all carried out is a bit too simplistic. So I just give it a 3. It's just an average movie. There's nothing good about it. There's nothing bad about it. Yeah. So
did you see the remake out of curiosity?
I did, but it's so long ago now I couldn't really tell you a lot about it. I do remember the story is virtually identical. I do remember that. It's just that it's set in more modern times. But the story is virtually identical. But I couldn't tell you a lot about it because, honestly, I probably haven't seen it in 15 years or something, so,
Oh, my God. I'm looking at stills from, so the remake's from 1986, same name, Invaders from Mars. I am looking at and it was directed by Tobe Hooper. Anybody who's not sure who that is, Tobe Hooper is the one who directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so we know this is a gem. I'm looking at stills from the film. The aliens look like giant worm monsters with fucking fangs.
Yeah,
I can't.
I'd probably give it a miss, Velvet. I'd probably give it a miss, to be honest. If you didn't,
no, I don't want to watch it. I was curious, but I'm not going to watch it now.
No, if you didn't
just looking at the fucking
if you didn't like the 1953 version, you're not going to like that one. So I wouldn't even worry about it. Truthfully, I'd move on and find something else.
Oh my God! I think I feel like I actually may have seen this myself. Like it came on probably. It probably came on fucking late night. And I just saw, like,
that
the
wouldn't
ass end
surprise
of
me.
it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
And I saw like the ass end of it, and I saw this giant like fucking worm monster with fangs, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Anyways, but what I am actually going to watch, I right before we actually started the podcast, I just like caught a glimpse of it, and I started watching like the first like half hour, and I'm riveted. I can't wait to watch the rest. It's just popped up on Netflix. It has Sandra Bullock in it. John Malkovich is in it. And the movie is called Bird Box, and it's just came out. And it's basically there's some kind of unseen force that causes people to commit mass suicide. And I was kind of like, oh, this kind of sounds like The Happening.
It sounds a bit familiar, doesn't it? Yeah.
I was like, oh shit. But I watched the first half hour of it, and I'm already riveted. I'm like, wow, this is generally from what I see is Sandra Bullock is trying to make it to some kind of sanctuary with her children, and they have to make it there blindfolded, because if you see whatever it is, it's what'll cause you to go crazy and kill yourself. And I'm just like, okay. And evidently this was based on a novel. And I was just like, I'd heard this was being made, then I didn't hear anything about it, and I heard it was supposed to be on Netflix, and all of a sudden it just popped up today. And I'm like, oh shit, let me check this out. Looks pretty intense. A lot of violence, a lot of action, a lot of crazy shit happening in the first half hour, and I'm like, okay, I have to watch this. Okay, so if you want to check it out, it's on Netflix. It's called Bird Box.
There you go.
Why it's called that. Yeah. All right.
Interesting.
So
interesting.
Going to check that out.
All right. So I think that's basically a wrap. So thanks for tuning in. Is that coming from the Bird Box?
I was shooting lasers. I don't know why, but I was all of a sudden shooting lasers because of all the fucking Martians and the aliens and the.
I thought you were trying to be a Tweety bird or something. It's like.
That's because I had my laser set to stun and not kill.
Okay. Being responsible. All right. Well, we should. So obviously, thanks for tuning in. We will be fingers crossed. We'll be back next week. We can't always make a guarantee that we will be on every single week, but we will try our best. And we will be back, and hopefully we can do a Christmas show. But we're not making any promises. Yeah. We're just hoping.
So it might happen. It might not.
Yes. But in the meantime, obviously, Merry Christmas to everyone that does Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone that just enjoys the time off and doesn't do Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, Velvet, although we will be talking before Christmas anyway, so.
Right.
But publicly, Merry Christmas. And, we will be, of course, back with our next show. Anything else we need to say or wrap up?
No, just happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we'll be back next time with our Christmas special. I'm really hoping we can do that, because I've loved the last 2 years we've done it, and I'd love for it to be an annual tradition, but we'll see how it goes, because I know we're both busy people.
Yes. Look, fingers crossed we'll make it work. All right. Well, that was another wrap. Thanks, everybody, and we will talk to you all again very, very soon. Cheers, guys. All right. 6 white boomers running around. It's an inside joke. Oh, dear me. Oh, dear. Beauty bonds, mate. Cheers, guys. All right. Bye-bye.